Welcome to your weekly astrological weather. This is your place to get practical guidance for not only surviving, but thriving with the cosmic tides. Hello, everyone, and welcome to your weekly astrological weather. I am so happy that you have joined us here today, maybe for the first time or maybe for I don't know, I think we're on like episode 600 something. So maybe you've been around for a long time, but either way, thank you so much for joining us. And I am thrilled to be here today with Joe G, traditional astrologer and also a member of the Astrology Hub team. And he's an incredible astrologer, and hopefully we'll get some electional information here today in terms of choosing the best dates to do certain things, which Joe is amazing at. Okay, before we dive in, one quick announcement. A few weeks ago, we announced that we were going to be changing the format of the weekly weather. But then we heard from so many of you that you didn't want that you like the longer format and you like how we go through the days. So we're getting mixed messages. And what we'd like to do is put a survey out and get formal feedback from all of you so we can make the best decision moving forward. And this will basically be the 2-question survey, just getting your preference for the format of the weekly astrological weather. So you can go to astrologyhub.com/feedback right now and fill out the form and let us know. Again, that's astrologyhub.com/feedback. And we will be poring over all of your input and making a decision here very soon. Maybe we're keeping it the same. Maybe we're just shortening the length. There's a lot of different options. All right. So everybody, thank you so much for your feedback. And Joe, let's dive into the week. I know this is a huge week astrologically, and we have some big things happening. So why don't we start there with a big theme and the major transits, and let's take it from there.
Yeah. Okay. So you did ask me for an election, and I think that's a good place to start.
Okay, let's back up 1 second. Explain what an election is.
Right. So electional astrology is basically just picking the time to do something. Usually people know that they have their own charts, but truth is everything has a chart, every moment and every action also. So we're just making sure that the moment that we're trying to do something matches the thing that we're doing. This week we have an eclipse. And as far as elections go, eclipses and elections don't go hand in hand together. Eclipses are erratic, a little unpredictable, and that's the thing that kind of makes them not so great for elections, because when we're trying to elect a time, we're kind of predicting the outcome of our action. And when an eclipse comes around, predicting that can be very difficult. So I always like to think about what can we still do that matches the symbolism of this eclipse. And this one is very interesting because it's not just an eclipse of the sun and the moon. Venus will also be with the eclipse. So it's an eclipse in Scorpio with Venus, and everyone is just going dark for a second. And you asked me about a theme, and I was going through a list of significations of Venus, what she represents and what we can do with her and all things like that. And I usually really gravitate towards like very mundane objects for planetary significations because I think it's a really good way of really understanding what they mean. And William Lilly, he's an older astrologer in the Renaissance. He says that Venus is related to wardrobes. So I'm like, imagine a wardrobe eclipsing. So it's like really emptying the wardrobe, your favorite clothes or anything that's to make you beautiful, like jewelry and makeup, and like having that sort of like symbolic moment of taking everything out and allowing yourself to not be beautiful and to not be pretty in those like 3 days and just really feel gross. And sometimes feeling gross is not comfortable, but when you're willingly there and like, you know what, today's my time to feel gross.
Wow. That's fascinating. Okay, so why would we do this? So what would be the point of emptying the wardrobe, sort of putting anything that makes us feel beautiful aside during this eclipse period of time, which we haven't gotten to yet, which days you're talking about.
Tuesday, Wednesday, yes.
Okay. What's the point of feeling gross? Like, how's that gonna please Venus?
Yeah, so it's less about pleasing Venus and more about a concept called sympathetic magic. It's that same sort of thing with elections, but you're kind of doing the reverse. With elections, you're trying to match the time to your action, but with sympathetic magic, you're trying to match your action to the time. So like back in the day when they used to have eclipses, they'd say eclipses are really bad for the king because it's the sun is eclipsing and the sun symbolizes kings. So what they would do, they would swap out the king for a day or two, just so like the new king would get like the consequences, which is not the nicest thing to do.
Poor person.
Right? But then the king would be fine. So it's kind of like that same idea, but in a more, I guess, humanistic and friendly way. We don't need anybody else to take our place. We're just understanding that Venus right now is going through a bit of a rough time. So we're allowing her to have that rough time, and that emptying out of the wardrobe is you stepping into that place and allowing yourself to feel gross, just the same way that she's doing right now. So you can be in her shoes and understand, what's this whole process like? Why is this happening? So yeah, emptying the wardrobe. I guess that's the theme.
Wow. I love it. Okay. This is so interesting. I've been devouring Carolyn Casey's books, and one of them is Visionary Activist Astrology. And it's very much this experiential astrology where you're doing things like this, intentionally doing rituals, but everyday stuff, nothing big and crazy. You're just connecting and communing and doing your best to understand the astrological energies from the inside out, like have an embodied experience of it. So what I'm hearing you say is that this is a way that we can have an embodied experience of what it feels like to have an energy eclipsed in our lives. So Venus is being eclipsed. So what happens when Venus can't shine her light? What happens when Venus isn't in her comfortable place? And then what does Venus represent within you? So what happens when you don't feel like you're your most beautiful or your most radiant or your most attractive or your most artistic, all those Venusian kind of things? What happens? Like, where's the Scorpio kind of excavation of the subconscious thoughts that come up? I can guess there's things around, value, are you valuable when you're gross? I love that you say that word. What can you find beauty in that? Like, can you actually find beauty in the non quote unquote beautiful? And, there's so many different things. I bet that this is going to be an incredible experiment for everybody. And that's what Carolyn Casey keeps talking about. Like, just experiment with these things. Like, don't take my word for it. Don't take anybody's word for it. Try it and see what happens. And then it becomes your own, So Joe, I love this. Thank you so much. So the electional is Tuesday, Wednesday to empty the wardrobe and to just allow yourself to kind of like, if you're not usually sloppy, maybe like allow yourself to be sloppy. If you're not, all those things. Okay. That's going to be fascinating. Please let us know how this goes in the comments. All right. Tell us more about the energy of this eclipse in general. What kind of themes and things are coming up for people?
Right. This one is super interesting from a mundane aspect too. And for those who don't know, it's like mundane is just the astrology of the world. Like things are like happening up and about because, okay, I'll get a little technical here, but so back in 2020, some of you might have heard about the Great Conjunction. It was Jupiter and Saturn together in the sky. They were getting really close and they shone their light together and they were really big in the sky. It was like a super big deal. And they happen somewhat frequently, but this one was a larger deal because we went into a new age with that. So these ages are elemental, and in 2020, we entered this age of air. When we're talking about the astrology of the world, that's a really big moment because we're going from earth to air, which is very physical and tangible, to computers and information, and literally is what happened. But the thing that's interesting about that is that the ancients would say that year is the year to pay attention to. It's kind of like the world had a new birth and it has a new birth chart. The
And you're
reason why
talking
I'm
about
saying that,
2020.
2020.
Yes. Okay.
And the reason why I'm saying that is that the ascendant of that year, so if we're looking at the birth chart of our new sort of like age, is Scorpio. And we're having the eclipse happening in Scorpio right now. So if you think about a person, like the first house and your appearance and who you are and what you do in the world, when you're having an eclipse in that area, it can be like an identity crisis of sorts. You're really going through like a whole new sort of like you phase. And throughout that eclipse, there's a little bit of that, oh, who am I? And what do I do? So take that and imagine the whole world going through this, who am I? What do I do sort of thing. And it's very interesting because when the eclipse is happening, Mercury will be rising. And I'm using the chart of the US because we're primarily talking about to a US audience. But the US is the superpower of the world. Everything kind of speaks to the US. So this would be relevant for everybody still. With Mercury rising at the moment of the eclipse, the thing that's causing this identity crisis is new information. News that come out that no one was expecting, or maybe some people were expecting, but it has that eclipse twist that causes that, whoa, what do we do now? So the energy of this eclipse is very much like that. And I think that that's why the exercise of emptying out the wardrobe is important in that, because it's going to the renewal of the identity. Because your clothes are the things that really tell the world, I like these colors and I like these things, and this is how I look like. So to switch things around and go empty for a second, I feel it can allow for jumping into the identity crisis before it comes to you sort of thing. You're like, you know what? Let's do this.
Yes. Okay. So instead of it having to happen to you, you're just saying, okay, I'm ready for this. I'm willing for this kind of change. Is there an eclipse window? Like, do you look at it that way, where it's like this eclipse kicks off then this eclipse portal that ends with the next eclipse?
Yeah, so we're like in an eclipse cycle. So it'll be the new moon that's happening right now. So that's the solar eclipse. And then we'll have the lunar eclipse a few weeks later, where it's the one in Taurus.
And does the new moon eclipse theme set the tone for the entire period? Or is there a different theme for the new moon eclipse than the full moon eclipse?
It's like every lunar cycle. It's that same idea where the new moon is like planting a seed, and then the full moon is like when it's full, grow, and then when the moon starts to wane again, going towards the next new moon, there's a new idea, new cycle starting. The eclipses are a little bit different because they happen across like 18 months. So we've already had a series of eclipses in Taurus and Scorpio. So this is more of a continuation of something that has already been happening. And next year, we'll have that closing chapter as we get ready for new eclipses in Aries and Libra. And we're very much sitting in this like Venus, Mars area or zone for last year, this year, the year coming, and the year after. So we're really like in this relational zone, I guess. So if we're trying to identify what sort of topics we're dealing with, it's really that us versus them, or what are we doing? Are we together? Are we not together? Like who's part of my tribe? Who's not part of my tribe? So this one, especially with Mercury rising as the eclipse is happening, is really that, I guess, the trigger to conversation. If we're putting that on a sort of a timeline, the first series of eclipses that happened earlier in the year, we're kind of like seeding this narrative. And then now we're talking about it and like learning new things about it that really make us look at it in a different way. And then next year, we'll close it.
Joe, when was the first series of eclipses that is related to this one? Do you remember the exact like months?
I don't remember the exact date, but I can look very quick. When would that be? I think it might have been in April, May.
Okay, so April, May, a theme began for you. So think about what that could have been, April, May. And now with this eclipse series here, we are revisiting that, but having a different orientation around it, rethinking it, revising it. There's new information.
Something new came up, like you learned something new about this, and now you can look at it in a different way.
Okay, Fascinating. And I know that these two particular eclipses, the one that we have today, and then the one that we're having in a couple of weeks, these are ones that astrologers, at least on our platform, have been talking about all year. Like these are the big ones for the year, right?
Yes, those are the big ones for sure.
And what makes these particularly intense or powerful?
Yeah, I think different astrologers will have different reasons for that. For me, it's what I was talking about like a new birth chart of the world sort of thing, because that was Scorpio rising. The eclipse is happening in the first house of this new world that we're in this like new Aries cycle that we're in. So it's really about that, setting up the new identity of the world and like finding out who's running things now, sort of thing. Because if it is the first house and it's like the face of the world, it's kind of like a change of face, like who's this new face, sort of thing. And the global sphere, that can mean all sorts of things, but on your personal day-to-day life, that can mean just like a new job or a new relationship, or if you are Scorpio rising, it can also be like a whole new phase and like really changing your style or going through like a little bit of like this is the new me sort of moment. Does that make sense?
It does. And I mean, the timing is incredible with the elections in the US on November 7th, which I know is the date of the next eclipse, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, this just the theme that you're bringing up, and then the fact that there literally will be new people elected, and whatever that fallout will be from, or maybe it's not a fallout, maybe it'll be a positive thing. I don't know. But interesting. If you're interested in eclipses and you want to study them more deeply, I highly recommend you check out our Eclipse Mastery course. It's a course that features 6 different astrologers, and all 6 different astrologers talk about different aspects of eclipses. Bernadette Brady is one of them, Donna Woodwell, Adam Gainsbourg. That we had an amazing crew of incredible teachers who focus on eclipses. Like this is part of the work that they do. So I highly recommend you check that out. You can go to astrologyhub.com/eclipse. And it's a great course that'll give you some nice foundational understanding of how to work with eclipses and what they mean and all that good stuff. Okay. So Joe, what else do we have this week? Because I know there's a lot going on.
Yeah. So just a few days after, actually on Tuesday, the moon's still in Scorpio, will square Saturn. And this is the thing that we've been having like every month, but now because it's also an eclipse, there's a little bit of a heightened sort of moment, especially because Saturn is now getting ready to move forward again, because Saturn is stationing direct. And that to me is very exciting because Saturn has been on Aquarius for so long, and it's nice to have that bit of like a changing pace. And it's nice that it's happening also during an eclipse season, because it has that sort of like very impactful, like things are really changing. Some people might have that really big sense of like, oh, things are moving forward. It might be a little like chaotic in the way that it shows up because of the eclipse, like, whoa, things are moving forward all of a sudden. But at the same time, it is Saturn in Aquarius. So there's that sense of like innovation and change and like thinking about the future and what we're going to do next. So this moon Saturn square, it can be a little rough around the edges, but it can also be exciting in the sense that it can get new sort of like teachings and wisdom to come. Because if we're thinking about Saturn in Aquarius, which is for those who are traditional astrologers, Saturn is a cold and dry planet, and Aquarius is the sign of Saturn that is warm and moist. So it's the sign that tempers Saturn the most. So it's when Saturn becomes like less challenging. So it really hones in on that like airy sense of like learning something new. And if we're even taking it back to that Mercury rising during the eclipse, is like there's a new information. We now know where things can go. With Saturn stationing direct is like maybe the plan, or maybe like knowing how much work it's going to take things forward, but at least now we know, sort of thing.
Okay. It's big stuff, Joe. Yeah. Okay, what else do we have? Because I know there's another big transit happening this week as well, right?
Yes. So let me double check the date because it depends on where you are, but I'm pretty sure it is on Saturday, Sunday. Mars will officially now be station retrograde. And last time that I was here on the weekly weather, we talked about Mars a little bit, but then now it's like that retrograde is really starting. So we're really gonna start to trace our steps back and do the revising of martial matters that we need to do. And martial matters would be like what we want to do and achieve in life, any sort of like contests and even like tough conversations that need to happen, which is what I said last time, or like the severing of bonds, or like really leaving something behind and taking things forward. Because it's a retrograde, there probably will be a lot of like back and forth in that whole process, but that's really getting started. And one thing too that I'm thinking about with this, because if the eclipse is happening in Scorpio, Mars is the ruler of the eclipse. And for Mars to be stationing right at the same time, it's really that exclamation mark that it's like this is super important. And one thing that can come with Mars and Gemini, last time I said this, that it can be a little bit like combative and some arguments can arise. But a key word that I really like for Mars and Gemini is it can be sometimes like offensive. Even like think about like cuss words and things like that are like very Mars and Gemini. And as I was trying to think about like little activities for people to do to really get into that sort of like Mars and Gemini zone, because it's going to stay there for so long, I got reminded of an assignment that I did in art school when I was doing painting and drawing. And it was like my first year, and the assignment was called Offend Yourself. And it was my favorite assignment. And basically what it was is that you had to like write a poem or make a painting about something that people talked about you very badly about, but it was just really your moment to face it. We're in an art school, so it was like, if you really want to be an artist, you got to face your fears, sort of thing. And I think that it's very fitting for this Mars and Gemini thing. So I was thinking about a thing that everyone can do, because not everyone feels comfortable with drawing or painting or taking pictures. So I thought about writing and like writing a poem. But I have very specific instructions. And there's something called Euphonics. Have you heard about that?
No.
Yeah, so, well, it's a convoluted story, but euphonics is kind of like the study of phonetics and what they actually mean. So, like, why do we say ah, e, o, and whatever? And even going back to like Platonic times, Plato has this book called The Cratylus, where they're really just talking about language and why do words come to be the words that we use, and is that really the first name of the thing? Like, what was the original name for everything, sort of thing. And they go on all sorts of explorations with that. But I'm studying that right now because I'm a musician and doing astrological magic. I always want to like bring the planets into that. And a cool thing that they do is that each phoneme or each sort of like letter has like an essence of some sort, or has an archetype. And I went through this book. It's called Euphonics by John, I forget who it was. Let me double check.
Joe, can you also spell euphonics?
Oh, yes, it's Euphonics.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. And the book is by John Mitchell or Michelle. I'm not sure. Maybe it's a French last name. And it's called Euphonics. And he goes through all of the letters and all the sounds that you can make in the English language, and he gives like qualities to it. And since we're in this eclipse and Venus is getting eclipsed, I'm like, how can we offend ourselves and also bring in the like Venus eclipse sort of thing? And can I read a bit of the book, because I think it really explains it?
Yes, please.
Okay, so So the short and simple E sound has an ephemeral and elegant quality. So I chose the E sound because it really feels like Venus-y. And he goes on to say, it is elevated, erudite, elated, epic, even effervescent. Quality present in engaging eloquence, exquisite, esteemed, elite education, and the enigmatic elemental elixirs, enticing essential essences, electric elegies, and esoteric echoing entrances of enchanting elderly elves eligibly elected due to their evidently excellent ethics.
Wow.
um,
Wow, that is fascinating. I mean, it's so true. All those words have they have this quality that does feel Venusian on many
mhm.
levels. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is the activity. Knowing that these sounds are Venusian and knowing that Venus is going to get eclipsed, how can you write a poem that offends yourself without using any words with that E sound or like that S sound? And really like sit with it and try to eclipse Venus in that moment and also offend yourself.
Oh my gosh. So, Joe, you've basically given us assignments to be gross for the first part of the week. And then for the last part of the week, we need to offend ourselves and not use any Venus words that sound awesome, by the way. Some of those are my favorite words,
Right?
like
I
enchanting,
know.
one of my favorite words. This is hilarious. But, and again, so the point of doing these things is to sympathize with Venus, to say, hey, like, we got your back, Venus. Like, we know. And so then for what? Like, are we expecting some sort of outcome from this that is positive?
Yeah, so like again with the whole concept of sympathetic magic is that you do the thing before it does you. So it's that
Mm.
kind of like you're offending yourself before anyone gets the chance to. Or like you're having the like tough conversation with yourself first. So then when the tough conversation actually shows up, you know what to say, or it's kind of like rehearsed. You're like ready for it.
Wow.
Um, so that's kind of like my thought process behind all of these.
You know what? Everybody just have fun with it. Like, play with it. If any of this is enticing, I'm using a Venus word, an E word. If
Yeah.
it's enticing to you at all, just try it on and then see what happens. And again, of course, please put your experiences in the chat so we can group, crowd learn together.
Mhm.
What this type of, it's very practical astrological magic, which, by the way, is a class that Jen Zart is going to be teaching next month for Astrology Hub. But basically, really getting in there with these transits, with these energies, and working, dancing, utilizing the energies in a intentional and fun way.
Hmm.
I love it. I love it. It's really like stepping into our role as co-creators instead of feeling like
Yeah.
the energies are like hitting us or bombarding us, or things are happening to us. It's like, well, things are happening and we can learn how to weave and dance with it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And even for like the skeptics who think that this will do nothing, I think it just gets you out of the, oh my God, Mars retrograde, everything is gonna suck for 6 months. And you're like, now like there's a fun activity that I can do throughout this, And you can
Okay.
write these poems as many times as you want.
Okay. So the poem can't use any of those beautiful E words. It needs to
Mhm.
offend you. So it's something that maybe you internalized something that someone
Mhm.
said to you at some point, and you're writing a poem about it. And this is something we're doing for Mars retrograde, or it's still this eclipse energy?
It's the eclipse. I brought the eclipse energy into it with the E sort of like taking that
Mhm,
out,
mhm.
but the core of it is the Mars retrograde. As Mars is stationing, it's kind of like this is the thing, like the thing that I'm most afraid of people offending me with. I'm just gonna sit with it and really face it.
Mm.
Um, I remember when I did this assignment for art school, there was this so I'm gonna get personal and kind of sad.
Okay, here we go.
but
We're holding you,
but
Joe. We can
thank
do
you,
it.
thank
Yeah.
you. But so early life for me was really rough. And at some point in my life, I had like chronic depression and I couldn't get out of bed for like months on end. And I didn't go to school. It was really sad. I was probably like 10, 11, 12.
Oh,
Um, and there was this one song, it was really sad, that I used to listen every day and like on repeat. And that was literally me just in a dark room, sad as all hell with that one song. And when I recovered, I never listened to that song again. But then in that assignment I made, that was me offending myself, like sitting with that song one more time and putting myself in that space of like really being depressed. And I did it in front of my classroom, which was terrifying. I just like laid on the ground and stared at the ceiling and played this song, and no one had a clue what I was doing until like the end of it, until the end of the song, where I came and I told the story and everything, and everyone like understood it. So it's really that sort of like the place you're most scared of, like just go there, you know. That's kind of like the idea of this sort of exercise.
okay. Joe, thank you for sharing that with us. I can so imagine you in front of your class doing this like very dramatic and emotional art for them.
Mhm.
And I'm curious how you got out of that like 3-year phase of depression when you were so young.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It
Have
sort of
you
just
looked at the
happened.
transits? I mean, have you looked at the transits and correlated it
Yes.
astrologically?
Yeah, it was shortly after I came to live with my dad, because my parents are divorced. And that's kind of like what started the whole thing. And it was my Saturn opposition, and I have Saturn in the 10th house. So it was Saturn in the 4th house. And I stopped living with my mom and I went to live with my dad. Um, and once that happened, things really changed. And I don't want to get too much into it, but my
Yeah.
dad really helped me. And I think that that's the thing that really helped me get out of my shell. Because I back when I was living with my mom would just let me do the depressing thing, and my dad did the Mars thing.
Well, he
Where
did the
he's
Mars
like,
thing, but he
go.
also did the
uh,
Saturn thing. Like the father
oh,
came in
totally.
and helped
Mhm.
you.
Yeah, totally. And he said, "You're not gonna stay in your room. Like that's just not allowed." He made me offend myself and walk to the library every time I needed to use the computer. It was actually so annoying, especially as a teenager, because I was like probably 15, 16 at the time, and I had like my online friends and whatever. And whenever I had to talk to them, I had to like get out of my room and walk to the library. There was like a 40-minute walk from my house, but just that like walk every day and like going out and experiencing life, it's like, whoa, like nice. Thanks, Dad.
That's so smart. Your father's a genius. Okay.
He is.
Brilliant. Okay, so thank you for that. All right, so we have these assignments and these different tasks we can do to work with the energy. We've gone through Monday, Tuesday, and then like I think that was Saturday and Sunday, the Mars retrograde, right?
Yes.
Do you want to fill in the gaps for the week? Any other like just
Yeah.
going through the days?
Yeah. So in the in between, not too much happens. The one thing that will really happen is Mercury entering Scorpio also and joining the party. Right on Friday, Saturday. So like we're pretty much dealing with eclipse energy all the way until like Wednesday, and then Thursday, Friday, we're kind of still in that zone, maybe like processing it a bit. And then comes like Friday, Saturday, Mercury enters Scorpio. And then we're already getting ready for that other eclipse that you mentioned, because this one, Venus is getting eclipsed. The next one, it's Mercury.
Wow.
So there's a very interesting sort of thing going on there. Yeah.
And Joe, I don't remember a lot of times when we're learning when the eclipses are happening, other planets being involved. Is this somewhat unusual, or is it kind of normal that like Venus is involved in this one and Mercury is involved in the next one?
Yeah, so Venus and Mercury, it can happen a lot more often than the other planets because they're always just so close to the sun. So
Right.
if there's like an illumination happening and they're close enough to the sun, you can like throw them in the mix. But yeah, it still doesn't happen too often because they usually aren't a few degrees apart from the sun. But this one is kind of like wild that like the eclipse happens at 2 degrees, Venus is at 2 degrees, and then the next one I think is at 18 degrees or something like that. And then Mercury will be opposite Uranus, all at 18 degrees or something, like around that thing. I didn't look into that week. That was in my week.
Okay. All right. Yeah. You, that wasn't part of the assignment. It's okay. No. Which signs will be most affected by today's eclipse?
Yeah. So I think this one can be pretty wide. Now, mostly, of course, like Scorpio, Leo, Aquarius, Taurus, all these 4 fixed signs for sure. But I think because of the Mars stationing retrograde and Mars ruling the eclipse, the mutable signs also kind of will have a little bit of a more punctuated taste of the eclipse. Especially Gemini or anyone who has Mars in Gemini. Yeah, so I'd say like top 4 would be those 4 fixed. So Leo, Taurus, Aquarius, Scorpio, and then Gemini.
And then Gemini. Okay. But so not all mutable, just Gemini.
Yes, mostly Gemini. The other ones too, but Gemini is like the one that gets close enough to the fixed signs to get in that mix.
Okay. All right. So basically the theme, and can you give us an intensity scale? 1 to 10, 10 being the most intense week we've ever had, and 1 being very, very, very chill.
I would not say 10 because I don't know what's going to happen, but I'd say close to the 8s and 9s probably.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we have an 8-9 week. We have a theme of emptying the wardrobe. And this is an opportunity because Venus is being eclipsed to do some sympathetic magic with her and allow yourself to take all the beautiful things out and not wear them for 3 days. Allow yourself to feel gross. And that this could be a time of identity crisis. So who am I? What do I do? There's new information that's coming in that's causing this sort of identity crisis moment. And the great thing is that it's an opportunity to renew identity. So, oftentimes we get very attached to certain images of ourselves. And it sounds like this is a really great moment to reinvent and to imagine yourself different and to step into sort of a new energy of who you are. This is also going to be happening at a global level. So this isn't just personal. So there's this sense of who are we and what are we doing and what is the whole point of all of this? And so the eclipse energy is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Tomorrow we have Moon square Saturn. And you're saying that now that Saturn is turning direct, that this is a big change of pace, that things are really starting to change. It can feel chaotic because of the eclipse and the proximity of the eclipse to this transit, but that innovation change is here, what we're doing next. It can feel rough around the edges, but new teachings, new wisdom, there's an opportunity to really make a plan, like actually start to make plans and put some structure around your next direction. And there's a sense of knowing like how to get there, how much work it's going to require in order for you to get where you're wanting to go. I'm going to skip ahead to Saturday, Sunday, so that was Tuesday. Wednesday, we're still in eclipse. Thursday, Friday, you said we're integrating eclipse stuff mainly. Yeah. Saturday and Sunday, Mars is stationing retrograde. So this is the other big astrology of the week, that we're revising all things martial. And that can be what we want to do, what we want to achieve. This could have some tough conversations as a part of it. We might need to leave something behind in order to get ahead of the tough conversations or get in front of having your feelings really hurt and being offended. You can offend yourself. And so we have our poem that we can do, eliminating all E words, another way to say Venus, hey, we're with you in this. This is an opportunity to just have, to me, it's also bringing the element of play into how we work with astrology, which I think sometimes astrology, we can get really serious, especially when we hear it's an 8-9 week in terms of
Yeah.
intensity. It's like, then everybody's like bracing themselves for like the horrible things that are going to happen. And I'm not saying they are going to happen. I'm just saying that is a human tendency to think that that's what's going to happen. So this brings some play and lightness into our studies and our experience of astrology. And I love it. I love the invitation to try and just see what happens. And then, of course, like I said, I think 3 times, please report your experiences in the chat so we can learn from each other. That's one of the most amazing things about practicing astrology and being into astrology at this particular moment in time is we can actually like crowdsource our experiences and learn more about all the different ways that these transits can be experienced. And that wasn't possible, like not that long ago. So I love that we can do that. So please play with us in that as well. I also, before we sign off, well, first of all, Joe, did I miss anything or mess anything up?
No, not at all.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Before we sign out, Joe is going to be one of the astrologers that are going to be featured at our 2023 forecast event, which is totally free. I think this will be our 7th year doing it. And it's where we basically look at 2023, the astrologers come at it from lots of different angles. It's always very dynamic and alive. This year, we're adding something to it also. So we're going to have the live panel event on Saturday, December 10th. It's free. Then for the next 6 days, we'll be going through all the zodiac signs and how like the different peaks and valleys of the year, the different opportunities, the different challenges based on your sun and rising sign for the entire year for 2023. So we're having different astrologers cover different signs, and that's going to be just a total like new bonus part of this event this year. And so we'd love to have you. You can get on the wait list for the 2023 forecast, which is just going to automatically get you registered for the forecast when it's actually open. But that is at astrologyhub.com/2023 forecast. And this is one of my favorite events. I feel like I get such a sense of like clarity and empowerment about what's coming. And it just helps, every year has a little bit of a different flavor and energy. I know next year there's a lot of change, like a lot of sort of like new chapter energy. So you're going to get to learn all about that. Joe, do you want to say anything about 2023?
Oh my God, yes. So much, especially after just talking so much about Venus and how like of the struggles of Venus, because next year I think is the year of Venus. I'm probably going to touch on this on the actual forecast, but Venus is going pretty strong next year. So I'm very excited to talk about that.
And if you're like, gosh, okay, so like, what does that mean? And what do I do with it? Start paying attention. Like just start. You can even literally ask Venus, like, what would you like me to know about you? What's important about you for me? Or how do I embody you more fully? And we can really invite these, I don't even know what to call them, like beings, into our lives. Yeah. But I mean, they're inside of us already. Like it's really just activating these different aspects of who we are. But go ahead, Joe.
Oh no, I was just gonna say I have because a lot of people like oracle decks, and I love them because I'm so like technical, and that's why I love traditional astrology. But oracle decks are really like not. You like you open the little book and you read it. But I'm only saying that because what I like to do, because some of you might know there are planetary days. So each day of the week, a planet rules it. And my morning practice is always to pull a card as if it's like the message of that planet for me on that day. So like Monday, I'll pull a card and this is like Moon, what do I need to know today? On Tuesday, it's Mars, what do I need to know today? And I go through the days, and that for me is a very like, is a great learning experience because it's weird, but you notice like the difference in tone and like the difference in the cards that come up on those days. It's really cool.
I love it. I love that so much. And those are the kinds of things that we can do. They're simple, they're easy. It really starts to make your astrology come alive in your life. So I love that, Joe. Thank you so much for sharing.
Of course.
And thank you all for being here. Thank you so much for being a part of our community. Also, don't forget to fill out your survey. If you have feedback on how the format of the weekly weather is going forward, please make sure you go to astrologyhub.com/feedback and let us know. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you for making astrology a part of your life. We're so grateful that our paths have crossed with you, that we get to share this time with you. Thanks for tuning in. And I can't wait to catch you on the next episode.